It had been months since I'd seen Mickey Gilhooly, but one day in July he came to my door at Mariposa Street, a little drunker than usual, and a little sadder, too, I thought. In fact, he looked like he just crawled out of the San Andreas Fault. He insisted on buying me a corn dog and chili cheese fries at Der Wiener Schnitzel, and then we went to a bar. He said he'd been feeling low ever since he'd lost his job at Stanton's Market and his girlfriend had moved out. But after a few beers, his eyes lit up as he confided that he'd been instant messaging with a Russian mail-order bride he'd met on the internet. "Your Russian girls are solid, you know," he said. "They're solid." Doreen had gone to visit her ailing stepfather in Pacoima. So I said, what about meeting some real live Russian girls? And Mickey said okay, so we went to the Las Palmas Ballroom on South Broadway, where I was hoping to pick up where I'd left off with my old flame, Svetlana. But Svetlana wasn't available, so I settled for a new girl named Natalia, and Mickey met a beefy thug named Slovenka, who promptly stepped on his feet. "Slovenka," Mickey muttered knowingly as we chugged a pint of Rittenhouse Monongahela rye in the men's room between dances. "She's solid." Slovenka was solid, all right. She could have squashed Mickey Gilhooly between her two fingers. But they hit it off like Mutt and Jeff, and suddenly Mickey was once again the old Mickey Gilhooly. The Mickey Gilhooly I remembered. "Where do you work, John, on the Delaware Lock? Awan, 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 awan." Mickey was sloshed to the gills. For weeks he'd been reading Turgenev in hopes of impressing the Russian mail-order cutie, and after another trip to the can for a few more belts of firewater, he climbed up on a table and began spouting stuff like, "Good evening, Vasily Andreevich. Antonia Bogdanovich is waiting for you in the parlor. Would you like some tea? You hear that, bro? Would you like some tea? That's a great line. Would you like some tea? This is a writer, people. Turgenev. Ivan Sergeyevich Turgenev." Of course we got bounced out of Las Palmas, but not before we'd made a date with the girls. Morning. After a trip to Der Wiener Schnitzel for breakfast of sorts, we started on the wine. Mickey's feeling down again, and he needs to get his alcohol content up if we're going to do it all well with the girls tonight. A month ago, Mickey informs me, he, quote, "put the plug in the jug," unquote, and joined the 12-step program. But he quickly became disenchanted with the whole business. After everybody spiels off their shit, we go outside for a smoke break, and everybody's pounding coffee like crazy, trying to catch a fucking coffee buzz. All they're doing is exchanging one addiction for another. It's bullshit. You know how people will say to a recovering alcoholic, "I liked you better when you were drinking"? Well, that applies to me. I liked me better when I was drinking. But one good thing did come out of the program, he informs me as he hands me the bottle. "You know, I've never been a Republican or a Democrat or a socialist or a communist, and I'm not a Catholic or a Baptist or a Methodist or an Episcopalian, and I've never been a Raiders fan or a Denver Broncos fan. Fact is, I've never been to a football game. I've never joined a church, and I've never voted. Do you see where I'm going with this? You probably never voted either, have you? Fuck no. Well, you ought to think about it, brother. I don't mean voting. I don't mean that, but I mean you ought to think about becoming a Democrat or a Christian or something." I felt like laughing in his face, but he was dead serious, and I didn't want to upset his apple cart. The thing is, you need a label in this world if you're going to be one of the bunch. Not a label exactly, but shit, what is the word I'm thinking of? Affiliations. Yeah, that's it. You need affiliations. Listen to this. Joe Jones, Ph.D., liberal Christian Democrat, president of the Rotary Club. See how great that sounds? There's a practical aspect to it, too. They need to know that shit when they write your obituary. But coming back to what I was saying, you know, I don't have a B.A. or an M.A. or a Ph.D., and I'm not a Mason or a member of the Elks Club or the Moose Lodge or what have you. I've never been anything at all, except a complete nothing. But now, thanks to the 12-step program, I've got a title, a label. I'm somebody. I'm something. I'm an alcoholic. It's official, and by God, it feels good. I want to shout it from the housetops. I'm an alcoholic. I'm an alcoholic. I feel like I belong now. I mean to the human race. I'm a real person, a regular guy, and it's beautiful. I'm one of the motherfuckers. Thanks also to the 12-step program, He's been reading the Bible, and he's surprised to discover that he finds it interesting, even fascinating. Back at the park, we plunked down on a bench with our wine. Reading the Bible got Mickey started on the Eastern religions, and he's been reading some of the Bhagavad Gita. If you take a look at the Hindu cosmology, he says, they've got the whole business figured out in terms of quadrants or whatever. The quadrant we're in right now, for example, is called the Kali Yuga. You probably know that. What it is, the Kali Yuga, is a kind of cosmic menopause. The Kali Yuga is called the Age of Darkness. We're right in the middle of one of the worst periods in human history. But the Kali Yuga, so they say, will be followed by the Satya Yuga, a golden age. Familiar story, isn't it? That night we all went out drinking at the Bitter End in Hollywood, and Slovenka got us started on the Boilermakers. "This'll put some fight in your pecker," she proclaimed as the four of us clinked glasses. Slovenka was getting big ideas now that we were looped on Boilermakers. She wanted to quit her taxi dance job at Las Palmas and become a mud wrestler at Korky's Kingdom, a sinister biker bar in Encino. That's what she called thinking outside of the box. Mickey was ordering double shots of Goldwasser in between rounds of Boilermakers and raving about Turgenev, and Natalia wanted to adopt a litter of feral kittens. Natalia and I tried to dance to Since I Met You Baby, but we ended up falling on the floor. Mickey at the bar was jawing endlessly with Slovenka. He was trying to talk her out of it, the mud wrestling, but Slovenka's sights were set on becoming one of Korky's mud angels. It wasn't going to be easy, she admitted. She'd have to work on her body slams and get her fighting weight down to 180. But Slovenka had stars in her eyes, and the tryouts were coming up in just 3 weeks, and there was no holding her back. The two of them were drinking sidecars now, doubles, and I suddenly realized what a truly heroic drinker Mickey Gilhooly was. I couldn't begin to keep up with him. None of us could. Then we went out on a boat. It may have been the next day, and I vomited over the rail at sunset into a rocking red and orange dancing sea. We were hitting the rye and the beer, but especially the rye, the Rittenhouse rye. It was goofy. I never even liked the stuff. I remember being in a room somewhere, maybe Laurel Canyon. An old woman with a single weeping eye told fortunes, and her little dog's name was Edgar. We were trying to mellow out on Tokay, but the sweet wine made Natalia upchuck, so we went with a nice half-gallon of Absolute vodka instead. The Absolute vodka got us to arguing, the three of us versus Slovenka. We were dead set against the Korky's Mud Angel bit, because none of us wanted to see Slovenka leave Las Palmas. We wound up in Venice Beach, always a treat for me because of the nostalgic Coney Island ambiance. Close your eyes and you can feel the boardwalk under your bare feet. Smell the cotton candy, and watch the sobbing carousel horses dance to the sad calliope music. We laced our morning coffee with Jack Daniels, then started pounding 40-ounce King Cobras. As our taxi pulled out of Venice Beach, I saw the organ grinder sitting on a curb in the rain, with only a few nickels and pennies drowning in his mournful monkey's little tin cup. "I forgot to tell you about the timetable," Mickey said. "Back when we were talking about the Kali Yuga." "Timetable?" "Yeah, timetable. They got it all figured out, the yogis and the swamis and what have you. How long and all that. From the Age of Darkness, where we are now, until the dawning of the Golden Age." "Okay, go ahead." "According to their calculations, we'll enter the Satya Yuga, the Golden Age, right around 426,880 years from now." Later that same day, Mickey fell off the Santa Monica Pier. Hours after we'd pretty much given him up for lost, he came lurching out of the ocean and staggered up to where we were sprawled on the sand under the pier, drinking Gallo Zinfandel. My stomach was growling. I realized that I'd forgotten to eat, maybe for days. Slovenka stood up and flexed her lats. "There's something about a kiddie pool filled with nice goopy mud that makes me just want to get in there and wrestle." "She'll be one of Korky's mud angels for sure," Natalia chirped confidently. "You better believe that shit, my friend. Keep your eye on this chick. She's going places. A month from now, we'll be watching her on YouTube." Natalia had completely changed camps on us. She was totally buying into the dream, Slovenka's dream, the Korky's Mud Angel dream. She was even talking about becoming Slovenka's manager. Suddenly it was night again, then morning, blinding bright on the beach. The screeching gulls, the sandpipers, the everlasting surf. No sign of the Russian girls. Their troika had pulled out. Mickey Gilhooly stood up, stretched, and fished a flat bottle of Rittenhouse Monongahela rye out of his boot. "Natalia's nice," he muttered. "But Slovenka, she's solid, you know." "Yeah, I know." The tide was coming in, and the Goodyear blimp was floating high above our heads. We emptied our pockets and spread our bills and change out on the sand. It came to $5.47. Just enough, it turned out, for a hearty breakfast of corn dogs and chili cheese fries at der Wiener Schnitzel.